Army won their third national championship in a row in 1946, but have failed to reach that same level of success ever since. Being sick of the mediocrity, Army fired their current head coach and would risk everything by signing a new coach in Daryl Payne. Coach Payne was told by the athletic director that he had 5 years to turn their program around or he would be fired. Payne would also be given a list of goals to accomplish during this time. To make matters worse, Coach Payne would be limited to recruiting players in states that border where the Black Knights play in New York. This would cut the recruiting pool drastically, considering he would only be able to get prospects from these 5 states. Make sure to comment down below any of the schools you want me to rebuild in the future. Going into year number 1, Army would start off as a 75 overall, and Coach Payne would be tasked with turning this roster into a championship contender. As mentioned, he'd only be able to do this with states that are bordering New York, so it would make finding good talent more difficult, but there would still be some good talent spread throughout, and some of that great talent was here in Ben Simmons, and he looked like he could be a great player. And Coach Payne was hoping that 4-star quarterback Jordan Smith could be the future of the team. To start the rebuild, we would be redshirting every single freshman, so that means in 5 years they would still be on the team. I tried to mirror the Black Knights schedule going into next year, and this was as close as I could possibly get to what their actual schedule looks like in real life. 3 games into the season, we were looking alright at 2-1, and we were currently in a recruiting battle for Ben Simmons. There was great news as we were already leading on hopefully our future quarterback in Jordan Smith, but finding talent would be extremely difficult in the middle of the year due to us only being able to recruit from a couple states. And after starting the year at 2-1, everything went downhill as we lost 4 straight, and we are now sitting at a 3-5 record. So far this year, we only have 3 recruits that have committed to the program, and going into our first game of the season will be very important as we're playing Air Force, and this game would be extremely important for the future of this team. I didn't mention this at the start, but I'd only be allowed to play 3 regular season games every single year, which means I had to be strategic about which games I played, and I would always try to play against my military opponents due to that being one of Daryl Payne's goals. To start off our first drive, we had several third down conversions that our quarterback was able to lay the ball on perfectly, and we were able to run down their throats and get a touchdown. Now with us rebuilding Army, we'd be forced to use the Wishbone playbook, and that was an extremely difficult but extremely rewarding playbook to run. This game had been going well so far as we were up multiple possessions in the second half, and our defense was able to get a stop. And to open up the fourth quarter, we had a 4th down conversion, which we were able to convert by finding our running back on the right side. With goal to goal on 2nd down, we decided to kick it out to our running back on the right side, and he had just enough speed to get to the outside and extend our lead. From there, we would do what we do best, and that's running out the clock, and we decided to add insult to injury as we got another touchdown right before the end of the game. That was a great way to start off our first game against a military opponent, in a game where our quarterback finished 15 for 15 on throwing, as we were now 1-0 against military schools. There was also great news after the game as 4-star quarterback Jordan Smith ended up committing, and he was going to be the future of this program. Our momentum ended there as we ended up losing to Coastal Carolina in the next week, and would lose a close game against our rival Notre Dame. This is what the recruiting class looked like so far going into our last week of the season, as it was now time to kick off another military game against Navy. As always, we had some recruits coming to this game. This game wouldn't mean much more than bragging rights as we were sitting at a 4-7 record, and Daryl Payne was not upset about that because this team had a long way to go and he knew that going into it. Thankfully, on our first possession in a snowy game, we were moving the ball all the way down the field, and Buchanan was able to get a big 1st down play here, but Navy's defense would harden up as they would stop us, forcing us to kick a field goal. Due to the weather, we were having some problems throwing the ball, so we were looking to get back in the ground game, and Ballard was able to get a huge play on 2nd down, but with a goal-to-goal situation, he was able to throw the ball perfectly to his wide receiver. Daryl Payne would stick to the ground game every single time that the Black Knights got a lead because that's what this team was known for, and it would be an easy way of killing the clock if we were able to do so successfully, and Robinson was able to take this simple triple option all the way down to the end zone for a touchdown. On Navy's next possession in the 4th quarter, we were able to get a stop on 4th down, and from there we would hold on to our lead in what was an overall dominating win against the midshipmen. We had some recruits commit after that game, but we were still in a recruiting battle with Ben Simmons, and we would end up finishing 5-7, and we would go into our 2nd year of the rebuild. Daryl Payne still had a lot of goals that he needed to complete, and with graduation hitting, we had a lot of our best players that were leaving at the end of this year. We were in contention for 2 top-level talents in David Witherspoon and Ben Simmons, but after splitting up the points evenly, we were able to get some serious big-time talent to commit to this team. That would put Army with the 24th best class in the nation with 4 4-stars being signed, and that would also be the first goal that Daryl Payne was able to knock off his sheet. Coach Payne thought that Ben Simmons would be best used as a wide receiver, and he would give our offense some much-needed speed as this team wasn't looking that good going into year number 2. Coach Payne wanted to redshirt Jordan Smith to let him progress a little bit before he gave him the keys to the team, and like always, we were going to be recruiting from those same states that we mentioned at the beginning of the video. Looking at season number 1, our team was at a 75 overall, and going into year number 2, they weren't much better as they were up to a 77. Daryl Payne was good at convincing players to join, including 4-star Jamal Collins, but this year he wasn't starting off that well as we ended up losing to Western Kentucky and losing to Miami of Ohio the very next week. The Black Knight season was going horrible so far, so we decided to step in against Wake Forest, and this would be a huge game for the rebuild as we had over 10 recruits coming to visit this week. 5 games into the season, Army was sitting at a 1-4 record, and that definitely wasn't turning any heads as our team was still really bad at a 77 overall, but we were getting our offense started off good with a big run from Johnson, getting close to the 10-yard line, and we had a new quarterback in Dan Villari under center, and he was able to find Lucky Brooks for a touchdown. We get the ball back and drive down and get our first look at Ben Simmons on the next drive, and after us going up multiple possessions, Wake Forest finally woke up as they ended up cutting into our lead. Even though this team was focused on running, Ben Simmons was a great addition to the receiving corps as he was getting open, and at the end of the drive, we'd be able to punch it in with our fullback Riley. Wake Forest would keep the game interesting as they would score on their very next possession, and after stopping us on our next drive, they were moving down the field until our defender was able to make a great play getting an interception, and on 3rd and 6 needing a 1st down conversion, Ben Simmons was able to get open yet again. This would be a great win for the program, getting us back in the win column, and what would be a good 4-point victory over Wake Forest. We had tons of players commit after that game, including 5-star athlete Justin Moore, and he was looking like he could be a great running back or receiver. It would still be extremely difficult finding good talent in the middle of the year with not a lot of players being left on the board, and our season wasn't looking any better as we lost to Eastern Michigan and followed it up with a loss to Appalachian State. Like normal, we would jump into our game against Air Force, and Dan Villari was looking to continue his connection with Ben Simmons as he was able to get open on a majority of his plays. Even though Ben Simmons was a great player, our focus was still running the ball as Villari was running the option perfectly and Johnson was able to get a first down, getting close to the red zone. And later that drive on 2nd and goal, Villari was able to roll out to the right side and throw across his body back to the middle of the field, but it actually worked out. And after forcing a turnover, we got the ball right back, and on our first play, Ben Simmons was able to somehow streak away from the defender and get a touchdown on this play. The defensive army was always a huge focal point of the team, and it showed every single time we jumped into a game, and Coach Payne was extremely excited with how this game was going. With 30 seconds left in the second half, we drove all the way down the field, and Ben Simmons was able to get open yet again, getting another score, and from there we'd end up holding onto our lead, and what was a great game from Ben Simmons, and a dominating victory over the Falcons. We'd go on to win our next game against Minnesota, and continue that momentum against Rice the very next week. All of a sudden, our season had completely turned around going into our last game against Navy, because we were sitting at a 5-6 record, and if we won this game, we would be bowl eligible, which is extremely surprising considering we started the year at 1-6, and it didn't seem like we had any chance of doing that earlier this year. It would be 3rd and long at the 20-yard line, so we'd be forced to pass, and Villari was able to find Lucky Brooks for a touchdown. But late in the 4th quarter, we would find ourselves down by 8 points, and Ben Simmons was able to finally get open and break a tackle, and he was able to get a huge gain, and it seemed like he'd been doing this every single time we were playing with him. With us needing a score late in the 4th quarter, Villari was finally able to cut into their lead, and on the 2-point conversion, Villari was able to step into the pocket and make a great throw to Simmons to tie up the game. Our defense would force Navy to kick a field goal, and they were able to somehow make this kick from super far, and with only a minute 20 left, we needed to get our offense moving down the field really quick, and we were able to find Lynch over the middle of the field for a huge gain, getting to the 50-yard line. And on 4th and 8, needing a huge key conversion, Villari was able to roll out to the right side and find somebody streaking wide open for a touchdown, and Coach Payne was ecstatic after that. But all the celebration would end on the very next play as Navy ended up taking the kickback, and we only had 12 seconds to respond. Coach Payne couldn't believe what had happened as we now needed 3 points to get back into this game, and we needed to get all the way down the field, and Villari was able to roll out to the right side, and he had a receiver that was actually wide open, and he dropped the ball. We ran a similar play in the last play of the game with only a couple seconds left, and with no time remaining, he was able to find his receiver on the right side in Burks, and he was able to break away from a tackle and actually get all the way to the end zone and get a touchdown. That would lead to the team celebrating as if they won the Super Bowl in a much deserving 4-point victory over Navy. This season had been completely turned around on its head, and that led to us going to the Military Bowl against FAU. But late in the 4th quarter, the team had been struggling as they were down by 5 points with only 3 minutes left in the game, and on 4th down, Villari wasn't able to get the first down here. And from there, the Owls would go on to run out the rest of the clock, which unfortunately led to us not completing any goals for the season. Going into season number 3, these would be the players that were leaving the team. We had 17 new kids coming to the program we were extremely excited about, as we had some good talent coming into the team along with some bad players. This class wouldn't be as good as the last one, as Army finished with the 30th best class in the nation with a 5-star recruit being added, but the team was looking a lot better as we finally had a player over 90 overall again. In season number 2, the team was sitting at a 77 overall, but the team would make drastic jumps in every facet of the game as they are now sitting at an 84. Through the first 7 games of the season, Army started off the year really well as they won 5 straight and were sitting at a 5-2 record, but so far this season, recruiting had gone completely terrible as no one was committing to the program and everyone was locking us out. This was one of the worst classes that I had ever seen, with most players being below 60 overall, and it was impossible to find any gyms. With the team sitting at a 5-2 record, Army was feeling confident going into their game against number 11 Notre Dame, and they were feeling so confident that they had all their top level recruits coming to this game. To win this game, we would need to play perfect, already down by 7 early in the first, but we ended up throwing an interception on our first possession. So just like that, the team was down by 14 points early on in the first quarter. Luckily, the team was remaining poised and calm as we were able to drive all the way down the field getting a score, and that was the first look at our 5-star receiver in Justin Moore, but unfortunately Notre Dame was able to answer back on their very next drive. From there, the game didn't get any better as we would only score 3 more points and we would end up losing by 24. We were looking to forget that game going into our next game against Air Force the very next week, and late in the 3rd quarter, we were up by 6 points looking to extend that lead, and we were able to do just that. With 2 minutes left in the game, all we needed was a first down to kill out the rest of the clock, and we were able to do that right here, and we were now sitting at a record of 5-0 against military schools. We'd go on to lose our next game against Arkansas, but we were able to bounce back against NC State in the next one. We'd be sitting at a 7-4 record going into our last game against Navy, and this would be a big game because if we won it, we'd be sitting at a 6-0 record against military schools, and we'd be able to complete that goal because it'd be impossible for them to have a winning record against us. With that in mind, the team hadn't been playing that well as they were down by 3 points late in the 3rd quarter, but Villari was getting us down the field, and he was able to find his man Blake Spurlock on the right side. Every time I jumped into a game, it seemed like the quarterback would play extremely amazing as Villari was making incredible throws, and he would play great in a good win over Navy, as we were now sitting at a 6-0 record against military schools, and we were finally able to knock off another one of our goals. Our running back finished with an amazing 1,500 plus rushing yard and 20 touchdown season, and that was good enough for him to win the Doak Walker Award. We'd have another chance at winning a bowl game against USF in our very next game. To open up the second half, we were down by multiple possessions, and Ben Simmons was able to make a big play on first down here, and on the very next play, he was able to be found yet again for a touchdown. Dan Villari's confidence was through the roof as he had been looking extremely good this game, and Blake Spurlock was able to be found on the right side for another big game. And down by 11 points in the 4th quarter, we knew what we needed to do as we threw up the ball to Ben Simmons, somehow able to pull this down with one hand and outrun every single defender on his way to a touchdown. Our defense would get a stop, and we were moving down the field, but with 50 seconds left, we'd ended up throwing an interception, and from there, we'd lose another bowl game, and that would lead to us not being able to knock that off our goal sheet. We were going into season number 4. This would be the last year for recruiting, and we had a lot of good players that ended up leaving at the end of this year. As mentioned earlier, this class wasn't that good as we were sitting at a 42 best class in the nation, and this is what the class looked like with only a couple players that are actually going to be able to make some good playing time for us. This is what the team looked like now, with Ben Simmons being our second best player, and with us only having one more year after this, I ended up redshirting every single senior so that we would have him going into our last year of the rebuild. And after redshirting and sitting out for a year, Jordan Smith was finally ready to take over this team. With this being the last year of recruiting, I'd only be going after players that were high 70 overall to see if they would be able to get their way onto the field next year. And after being at an 84 overall last year, the team would actually go down in overall due to us redshirting all the senior players. I wanted to get Army off to a good start against number 5 Notre Dame, so I decided to jump into the first game of the season, and it was good to get a look at our sophomore quarterback Jordan Smith, as he'd been making some good throws up until this point, but we were down by 10 points. Luckily, Jordan Smith also has some wheels, so he was able to show him off here, cutting into the lead, and after our defense got a stop, we were able to drive all the way down the field yet again, getting a touchdown to Ben Simmons. Going into the fourth, we were up by 4 points, and thankfully with our defense playing so well this game, they hadn't let Notre Dame score since the first half. We'd use that momentum getting all the way down the field, getting another score, and Jordan Smith played amazing in his first game under center. This will be our first win against a top 5 opponent this entire rebuild, and we're looking to get another win against number 10 Pittsburgh later on in the season. 7 games into the season, we were sitting at a 4-3 record, but I wasn't worried about that as we had one more year, and that's all I was worried about. And every single game that we jumped into, it seemed like Ben Simmons would get open on every play, as he was able to outrun a defender, getting the first points on the board. And on the next drive, on 2nd and long, Jordan Smith decided to throw it up to him yet again, and he was always able to come down with it. Coach Payne was loving the play from Simmons, but we were reminding Pittsburgh that we could also run the ball, as our fullback was able to get a huge 15-yard play. To close out the first half, we were able to get a score right before the end of it, and to open up the fourth quarter, we were able to do the exact same thing. We were only up by 7 late in the fourth quarter, and we were unable to get a conversion on 4th and 5, and Daryl Payne was extremely upset, but it didn't matter as we were able to kick the game-winning field goal with time expiring. Even with the team going down in overall, we were somehow sitting at a 7-3 record, and after beating Iowa the very next week, we were sitting at 8-3 going into our last game against Navy. This game wouldn't be much of a contest whatsoever though, as we were up by 26 points in the fourth quarter, and we added insult to injury as we went up by 33 points. This game would be our most dominating victory so far, and for the 3rd year in a row, we made a bowl game and we were looking to finally get a win against Memphis. But with that in mind, the team was playing horribly as we were down by 21 points in the second quarter, but Ben Simmons was finally able to cut into that lead a little bit. But after the defense was able to get a stop on our very first play of our next offensive drive, Mark Lynch was able to outrun every single defender, and within 2 plays, we had scored 14 points. Our defense would give up a score, but we were able to answer back with 20 seconds left, and down by 7 with 3 seconds left in the half, Jordan Smith decided to just throw up the ball to Ben Simmons, and of course, he always came down with it. We had somehow tied the game coming out of the first half, and Jordan Smith was finding Ben Simmons yet again, and of course, he caught the ball. And at this point in the rebuild, I think Ben Simmons is my favorite player that I have ever recruited in any rebuild. Somehow, our offense was on another level this game, and we were up by 10 points late in the fourth quarter, and our defense was able to get another stop, and even Coach Payne was confused how we got to this point. This team was proving that it had the firepower to compete with some of the best players, and Ben Simmons was of course making another play, and I can't stress how much I love this guy. He would end up breaking the school record for receiving yards in a game with 263, and I could not believe that we pulled off the 21-point comeback. Coach Payne was finally able to mark off winning a bowl game on his goal sheet, and going into season number 5, we had all the momentum on our side with all of our seniors coming back. We only had 2 players leaving at the end of this year, and with Jordan Smith leading the way, this team looked like they had the potential to be the best team in the entire nation. In season number 4, we were sitting at an 83 overall, but opening up season number 5, we were sitting at a 93 with our offense being a 97. Skipping 6 games into the season, we had absolutely blown out every single team at this point, and we were sitting at number 18th in the nation, and luckily for Coach Payne, Jordan Smith was currently in the Heisman watch as that was one of his goals that he needed to complete. I decided to jump into our game against Oklahoma to see our team, and early in the second quarter, we were up by 14 points finding Ben Simmons on our first play. Later that drive, we'd get all the way down, getting a touchdown, and this game wasn't even close as the backups ended up coming in the fourth quarter, and even our backup quarterback was making a great play. We ended up destroying Oklahoma by 38 points and would narrowly defeat Miami of Ohio the very next week. We were looking to continue our undefeated winning streak against military schools against the Air Force, and Jordan Smith was showing off his legs early in the second quarter, going up by 14. On the very next drive, we were seeing double as he was able to do the exact same thing, going up by 21, and from there, it was another dominating victory and another game that we scored 45 points. We would cruise to victories over Arkansas State and Old Dominion in our next 2 games, but going into our last week, Jordan Smith was no longer a Heisman finalist. Playing our last game of the season, we'd be solely focused on getting Jordan Smith back in the Heisman spot, so I would be making sure that we padded his stats throughout the entirety of this game, and we'd be starting off with a big play on our first drive. A couple plays later, Jordan Smith would find Justin Moore for our first touchdown of the game, and on our next drive, Smith was able to roll out to the right side, finding Ben Simmons at the back of the end zone. Jordan Smith was looking like one of the greatest quarterbacks that I have ever seen as he was making a great throw, and Justin Moore was able to get open, getting his 3rd touchdown of the game. And to begin the second quarter, Jordan Smith had just thrown his 4th touchdown. With almost 500 yards of total offense, he had 5 touchdowns, and our most dominating performance yet as we won by 59 points. That game would save the video as Jordan Smith would become a Heisman finalist, and that would knock off another one of Coach Payne's goals. We'd also be sitting at number 2 in the nation, playing the Hokies in our first game of the playoffs. Coach Payne and I were extremely confident going into this game as every single game I jumped into, our offense was completely unstoppable. And that showed here as we were able to drive all the way down the field, and Smith ran the triple option to perfection, getting a Bullock touchdown. And of course, it wouldn't be a Black Knight game without Ben Simmons making a big play as he took a circle curl route and was able to juke out a defender and get a 39-yard reception. Jordan Smith showed great awareness in every single play as he found Kevin Payne on the right side, and with only a minute left in the first half, we were trying to get down the field quick, and Ben Simmons was able to step back, juking out a defender, getting another big play, and on the very next play, we were able to extend our lead as Jordan Smith found Kevin Payne yet again for another score. The Hokies would make the game interesting as they would score on their very next possession, and with only 2 minutes left in the game, we were only up by 3 points looking to kill out the rest of the clock, and Roberts was able to get a big first down play, and with us needing a first down conversion, Jordan Smith was able to run the option and get us a first down, and we were able to effectively run out the rest of the clock, resulting in our biggest win of the rebuild thus far. We would end up playing the main character in Georgia the very next week, and I was expecting them to be a lot more difficult than Virginia Tech as we were down by 3 points late in the first half with our offense struggling. Luckily, our offense was finally able to get down the field and Jordan Smith used his legs to get on the board, and we had been struggling running the ball this game due to Georgia's great defensive line, but we were finally able to get some momentum, and with the crucial third down conversion to open up the fourth quarter, Ben Simmons was finally able to make his mark in this game, getting a first down, and Jordan Smith was continuing to show how talented he was as he was able to use his legs to outrun every defender to his score. Our defense had been playing extremely well this game as the Bulldogs only had 3 points up until this point, and on a crucial fourth down conversion needing to get a first down, they were unable to do so. Our offense was stopped shortly after, and we were only able to get 3 points. With less than a minute left, needing a score on fourth and goal, our defense was able to get a stop, and from there, Jordan Smith ran the quarterback sneak to run out the rest of the clock. The Army Black Knights were finally back to glory, and Daryl Payne was able to hoist the coach's trophy as he knocked every single one of his goals off the sheet. Click on one of the videos on the screen to see how I fared when it came to rebuilding Navy and Air Force.